Okay, so my name is Janett and I am an alcoholic. Hi. And I want to have the steps in front of me, so I'm going to have this here. Now, I've been thinking about this for about a week since I got back from vacation, and I'm so grateful that I'm sober today to do this. Just one thing I would like to read before I start that was already read today. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. That's page 58 of How It Works. And that's what we do with our shares. Now, I'll start with three things that my sponsor did. Starts when she shares with. My sobriety date, the day I got sober, was July 12, 2009. My sponsor's name is Jeannie, and my home group is the Women's Primary Purpose on Wednesdays at the East Club at 5:30. That is not my first sobriety date. That is not the only sponsor I've had. And that is not the only home group I've had. And I'm sober today. So something happened. Now, I'm originally from California. I grew up in a home that was chaotic and loving and colorful and full of problems and a lot of time full of alcohol. And sometimes full of drugs. And by the time I was a teenager, I was very angry at the people around me. Now, by then, I had a lot of reasons to be angry. I had been abused in several ways by people that I trusted, and neglected by other people that should have been watching but were drinking instead. So I was fairly angry by then. So when I took that first drink, I always smile at this part because it was my opening to dealing with everything that was going on. I was a little over 13, and I was alone in my parents' house on a Saturday night. I'm sorry, I always forget that it was a Friday night, and the reason that I know that is because I went to the refrigerator, got 3 Corona bottles, and then, because there was always alcohol in my house, preferably Coronas if my mom had her way, and I went to my bedroom, and I closed the door behind me, and I opened all 3 of them, and I started listening to Incubus and getting depressed. And I drank 1, and then 2, and then I remember feeling really good. I felt really good at that moment. And then I felt really dizzy. And then I went towards my window. I didn't have a screen anymore on the window, so that makes it possible to do this because my house didn't need screens on windows anymore. Chairs kind of went through them all the time. So I stuck my head out the window and threw up everything I ate at school that day. And when I was done, and that's a lot of throw up, and when I was done and I could breathe again, I remember the first thought I had at that moment was, I remember my throat was burning. I had never thrown up in that way, with the alcohol still in me. And I remember thinking, I'm going to chase this until I die. I was going to chase this feeling until I died. And I went back into my room and then went to sleep. And, and that started me. So, I was looking for something, and I had found it. Now, at that point, I had also started looking for other things, as in God and people, and any way that I could be saved. I entered high school, and I found a lot of other things that could possibly save me. A lot of other people that I wanted to be saved by, and a lot of more alcohol. It was a time that we were all drinking and experimenting, and I always seemed to find the group and the people that drank and did other substances. Once I got to the point where I was drinking heavy enough, I started surpassing the people I was drinking with. And I ended up at about 15 or so. Once my grandmother passed away, I tried to commit suicide. I was intoxicated. I had smoked weed for the first time that day, I think. And I ended up in the hospital because I came home. My parents saw that I was intoxicated. They tried to give me milk. That's very cute of my stepfather to do. They called the ambulance because I was and I went into prior to that, I went into my grandmother's room, took most of her pills, her cancer pills, since she didn't need them anymore, and then cut myself, and they called the police and the ambulance. So now I was out in the open. Now everyone knew that I was crazy. So now I could drink the way that I wanted to drink. Now there was no stopping it. And my mother, who spoke as much English as I speak Chinese, can kind of understand it. She was told that she needed to take me to therapy by the state. I started going to therapy. I started taking antidepressants, mixing them with alcohol, and not telling anyone because I was just doing what everyone else was telling me to do. And as long as they didn't find out how I was drinking, then I would do anything anyone told me to do. And that was my life. There's a story in the big book that says, when I drink, I give control of my life to everyone. There is nothing that I have control over. I have no choice at that point. And that's what my life was. If they told me, take this pill, go here, go there, do this, lay down, I would do that as long as I could continue to drink the way I wanted to drink. And I got in serious problems, in dangerous situations. And by the time I was 20, I was drinking daily, drinking to the point where I was drunk every weekend, and coming home to my parents' house and getting in arguments with them. And as they were saying, your sisters are watching you kill yourself. What are you doing to yourself? You're the oldest. You're supposed to tell them what to do, how to live life, because apparently my parents couldn't. And I was supposed to be the example. Grabbing knives and trying to cut my stepfather, and taking his drugs and running off with them. And not doing them. I just wanted to run off with them. My parents just, they didn't have it in them to kick me out, but all they could do was scream at me and tell me that I was hurting them. And all I could do was drink more. So I went to a club one day, and I drank. Again, I was not 21. Got very drunk there. Left and started driving home. If anyone's from California, I was going from West Covina to the San Fernando Valley. That's about an hour and a half drive, an hour drive without traffic. And this was 3 a.m. So I was going 100 miles an hour. I was driving very dangerously, and I was pulled over, and I was saved that night from killing the person I was in the car with and anyone else that was on the freeway that night. I was taken in. I don't remember that night at all. I remember trying to possibly kiss a police officer. Yeah, and was not a man. And being taken to the police station, and they put me in a not the drunk tank, but an actual like holding cell by myself because I was dressed in a way that I could not be with other people. So that was my night in jail. Cold and this incomprehensible demoralization was my night in jail. And I had had other situations happen by then. And this was worse somehow because I had chosen these things. At least that's what I thought at the time. I thought I had a choice in these things. I thought I had a choice in drinking. That's what they told me. That's what everyone around me told me. Why don't you stop? Why don't you cut back? You have a choice here. We came to this country to give you a better life, and this is what you're doing with it. So I got out of jail that day, that morning, and called someone. Again, they said, do this because I went to pick you up, and I did that. Because that's what I do when I'm drinking. I have no control over myself or the things that happen. I went home. I remember I went to work. It was a Thursday night that this happened. I went to work on Friday morning, and I go in and I go right to my manager's office. I'm late, of course, and I start, Susie, I'm so sorry. I was late to work, but it's just that I got a DUI last night, but I'm fine. I'm ready to work. Everything's cool. And she looked at me and she said, Janett, are you okay? And I said, yeah, everything's fine. I just need to get to my desk. Can we not talk about this? And it's just a DUI. And she said, normal people don't get DUIs. My drinking life was normal to me now. This was reality to me. This was normal. You wake up in different places. You don't know what happened the night before. You're told you did horrible things the night before, but it doesn't matter because I will forget about it by that night when I'm drinking again. This was my normal life. And I had been doing this for years at this point. So I said, thank you, Susie, for your concern. I'm going to go to my desk now. And I did. And a few months later, I started doing all the DUI classes, $25 a class. This was in 2005, so it's a lot more expensive now, I know. I think I paid like $1,000 for the DUI classes. I met some very interesting people in there. That did other substances and that I hung out with afterwards. And then I did community service. I had to do 200 hours, 199 hours at Goodwill. And I was working full time and I was doing all of that. And when I was done with that, I went back to the judge and I said, I'm done. And he said, what about these 5 AA classes? It said classes on my thing. And I said, what about them? He said, you have another 6 months to do these classes. If not, you're going to jail. And I said, that's horrible. Why would you send me to jail for something that I don't need AA? My uncles and my father need AA. If you went home right now and you saw them, you would know who's the one that needs AA. Aside from that, they had been going to, I had heard when I was at home, sometimes there was always talk in the background about what was going on with the adults. And there was always that uncle and this uncle and my dad that went to an AA meeting. And there they are drinking again. And possibly the next week beating their wife again. Who knows? AA didn't work. But I had to go to these 5 AA classes. So I looked it up on the internet. There was the internet by then. And cell phones. There were flip phones at the time, but yes. And I looked it up, and I found this one in Van Nuys, California, if anyone knows where that is. It's not the greatest location. I also live there. And I went to this meeting. It was a Saturday morning. I remember this specifically. It was Saturday morning. I walk in, and there is these people are in a circular kind of table, and I sit down on the end outside of it, like I did for a long time after that, and I just sit down, and they are talking about newcomers that don't give enough money in the basket, and the coffee is so damn expensive, and why are we still paying rent to this church when they don't need it, and and who's the supply person, because we don't have ever a supply person. And they were yelling at some point. They were just yelling, and I sat there and I remember thinking, damn, this is like my family. I can so do this. This is great. It's literally a telenovela. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to come every day to see what happens tomorrow. And it's all these old white people too. And I'm like, don't look a little different, but it's about the same. It's just different language. And we, and then after the meeting, I get up and I had given them my little court card, and they have signed it, and they said, okay, now we're going to explain this to you. This was a committee meeting. This is not a real AA meeting. What you should do is come back on Monday, because we don't have a meeting tomorrow on Sunday, but come back on Monday at this time, and then you'll be at a real AA meeting. But here's your court card anyways. And I said, thank you, and I walked out, came back on Monday, and then I went to a real AA meeting. Now, I don't remember it. Nor do I remember the next 4 meetings I went to. I do remember on Monday, the week after, going back, because I went to those 5 meetings that week somehow. I remember coming back on Monday, and when they said, are there any newcomers here, I raised my hand, and I said, I am new. I don't know if I'm an alcoholic, but I'm new. And I said, okay, that's great. That's great for you. Okay, moving on. And I was like, I just confessed to something. Where's my medal here? I need something. I am a young woman in AA. You should give me a medal for this. And I kept going back because everyone was so nice. I would go back to my mom's house, and they would call me a slut and a liar. And then I would go to AA meetings, and they would say, we're glad you came back. And then I would drink in between, and I would go back to my mom's house, and they would call me again, the same names. And then I would go back to AA meetings after I drank, and they would say, we're glad you made it back. That was one reason I went back. The other reason I went back was because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't know rehabs existed. I didn't have insurance. I didn't know there was help outside of AA. This is all I knew. So that's why I kept going back, because I had no other choice. This was the last house on the block for me, and because you were all so nice. No one ever said, I spilled more than you drank. I heard that one. People would say things like that when youngsters would come in. No one ever said that to me. No one ever said, you're too young to be an alcoholic. They just said, we're glad you didn't kill yourself. I stayed in AA, but I would keep drinking, and I would get a sponsor, and then I would drink. And the reason I would drink was because I would get to step 4, and I would start writing it. Now, I love writing about myself. That's not a problem. But God knows I was not going to tell this 25-year-old white girl what I did in my home and what happened to me on my 5th step. She would never understand. She would never know, and she would never understand, and she would probably take some people to jail. And I can't have that happen to my brothers and sisters. So I kept going out, and then I would come back in, and then I would go back out. And this happened for 3 years. 3 horrible years of having a lot of AA in my head and alcohol in my body. That is a horrible place to be. I finally stopped drinking, one, because I had so many friends and my whole life had actually started becoming AA. I let go of the relationships with the drug dealers. I let go of the friends that were still drinking. But it took time. It took a lot of time. It wasn't instant for me. And I started going to a lot of meetings, so then I didn't have time to hang out with these people. I didn't have time to even be at home sometimes. So all I would do was go to work and go to meetings, and go to work and go to meetings, and get a sponsor, and then maybe drink sometimes, and I would just go back and forth and back and forth. But at least I was here. At least I was trying. And no one ever said, you've gone out too many times. You can't come back. They just kept saying, we're glad you didn't kill yourself this time. I said, okay. So the last time I drank, I had been a year and a half sober, dry. I didn't have a sponsor. I was just coming to meetings and taking up commitments and not working on myself or my steps. And I had been preparing and thinking about and planning on drinking for about 3 months by then. I made up an excuse, a problem that I had. I got mad at my boyfriend for some reason. Started driving away in a car down the hills. I was house sitting. People now trusted me enough to let me house sit. And I was house sitting in the Sherman Oaks Hills, so, up there. And I was driving down, and right before I get to Ventura Boulevard, I stop and I'm crying, and I'm on a stop sign. And then I said out loud, God, if this is not what I'm supposed to do, because about 2 minutes ago I called my cousin who I used to drink with a year and a half ago, and I said, I'm going to go over to your house. And she said, okay. And I said, I'll take the alcohol. She said, okay. So if I'm not supposed to be doing this, if I'm not supposed to be on my way to her house, please give me a sign. Any sign will do. And then I got rear-ended at that moment. Right at that moment. Someone and I was like, oh, shit, what just happened? And I pull over, and the guy pulls over, and he's really nice, and I'm crying, and I'm the victim. And he's really nice. He gives me his information. I have insurance in my car now too. So I have a driver's license. I have insurance now. AA, got me responsible, even though I'm not doing the steps. You guys told me to do these things. I did these things. Just I won't do the steps though. So give him my information, and then he leaves. He said, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I get back in my car. He leaves, and I remember thinking, that wasn't the sign. I wanted something bigger. Where are the animals going through Ventura Boulevard? I needed something bigger than that, God. So Thinking I still had a choice, I chose to drive over to the liquor store. I used to go to liquor stores, and bought the Hennessy and this and this and that, and then went over to my cousin's house, walked in, she saw me and she said, "What happened to you?" And I said, one, I have eyebrows now. Two, I'm not a blonde anymore. And three, here's the alcohol. And she said, "Don't care about anything else. Give me the alcohol." And we started drinking. We ended up in Pasadena. We did a bunch of stuff. That night, the last night that I drank, I couldn't get drunk. I don't know if anyone's ever been in that place where you're drinking more than everyone around you, but because your body hasn't had any alcohol, my mind hasn't had any alcohol in so long, it doesn't know what to do with it. So I'm not intoxicated. I'm literally seeing my friends pee on the sidewalks like we all used to. And I'm seeing them do this. I'm like, why are you doing this? This is embarrassing. We're in Pasadena. Have some class, damn it. And and I'm seeing this, and I'm not able to get drunk, but I'm drinking more than they are. That was a horrible place to be. When I'm ingesting alcohol and I can't get drunk anymore. It stopped working. Oh my God. Do I kill myself now, as Bill said? Not yet. I get in the car with them. I go home that night and find out that my boyfriend, bless his heart, went over to my parents' house. My boyfriend is white. He does not speak any Spanish. He went over to my parents' house and walked in and said, "I can't find Janett." And they said, "What?" And then my cousins who do speak English said, "Well, what do you mean you can't find her? Have you called her cell phone?" About 50 times, yes. So after that, and my cell phone was off, I turned on my cell phone that night, and I got a lot of messages from him, messages from my mother, messages from my sister. Everyone was looking for me because apparently everyone thinks that I go crazy when I drink. The next morning, I wake up and I have a hangover, and my sister, my little sister, who's 16 at the time, she's 8 years younger than I am, and I'm 23, or however old that is, 15 or whatever. And she calls me, and I pick up, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm good." And she said, "But you lost all that time, a year and a half, sober." And I said, "Kimby, the time doesn't matter. I'm okay." And she said, "Okay, I love you." And I said, "I love you too." We hung up. I didn't go to a meeting that day. I wanted a beer that day. I hate beer. And I wanted a beer that day. And I didn't go to a meeting that day. I just stayed near people that cared about me so that I wouldn't hurt myself. The next day, I went back to a meeting, my home group. And I walked in. My boyfriend went with me. I walked in. I raised my hand when they said, "Is there any newcomers?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're a cake person for Friday night. Here I am." And they said, "Yay, great, you're back. Okay, moving on." And I'm like, "Are you serious? I just came back. Where is my medal now?" And of course, they started crying for several reasons. And that was humbling. It was not humiliating in any way for me to come back to my home group and say I drank again. There was no humiliation at all. It was just humbling. The next day, my boyfriend said, "Do you want me to go to meetings with you again?" And I said, "No, I need to do this for myself. I do not want you to go to meetings with me anymore." And he said, "Okay." I started going to meetings. And I'm sorry I took so long on my drunk-a-log. There's just so much. After, I remember 2 years into my sobriety, the sobriety I have today, I went to a meeting and there was this, and I had been contemplating getting another sponsor. There was this woman up at the podium. She was Dominican Republic. She was from New York, and she was a great speaker. And I remember her saying, "This is life or death. You will die from this." And I said, "Oh my God, I've never heard that before." And I said, maybe I should get a sponsor this time, a real. And I went up to her and I said, "Can you be my sponsor?" And she said, "I can't. I have too many sponsors right now." And I said, "Okay." So I was on the hunt. I'm going to get a sponsor, and I'm going to do the steps this time. And I'm looking for one, and 2 weeks in, I'm done. I'm like, yeah, it's been 2 weeks. I'm not going to look anymore. This is ridiculous. And I go to a meeting. I walk in, and there's this woman who's up at the podium. There's a podium there, and she's speaking. She talks about her childhood. She talks about the woman she is today. She has long black hair, and she has a halo on her head. And and she spoke, and I said, okay, I found my sponsor, yay. And she leaves, and I was like, I'm gonna come next week. I'll ask her next week. Come next week. She's not there anymore. She was actually the secretary for that meeting, and that was her going out speech. So she might be back next week, though. I'm like, can I have her number? And they told me, no, we cannot give you her phone number. She has to give it to you. I said, great. So I go back the next week. She's not there again. Go back the second week. And she is there. And I walk up to her and I said, and she's talking to someone in the middle of her talk with someone. And I said, "Hi, my name is Janett. I need a sponsor right now, and I need to do the steps. Please, can you please be my sponsor?" And she said, "Okay, that was really fast. Why don't you walk out with me first?" I said, "Okay." So I start walking out with her. She's talking to this woman. We get to her car, and Jeannie takes her own purse and gives it to me and says, "Hold on to this." I'm like, this is nice. I could sell this. And then my family likes nice purses. They would buy this. And then I'm like, this woman is crazy. She's giving me her purse. And then she opens her trunk and she starts taking out bags of clothes. And I find out that she's donating that clothes to a organization that helps women who've come from abusive relationships, a Jewish organization that helps women who have come from abusive situations. And I thought, one day I'm going to be Jeannie when I grow up, just not yet. Jeannie Rab, she was Rab at the time, so I've seen her through a divorce, took me through the steps. With step one, I'll try to, because there's so much that's happened in my life, and with step one, what I needed to look at was whether or not I was an alcoholic, which is described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and whether or not I fit into that description. That description is, do I have the phenomenon of craving? Do I have the obsession? Do I obsess over alcohol whether I'm sober or not? Which is a big yes, even today. When I drink, when I take that first drink, because there's nothing between me and the first drink to stop me. When I take that first drink, does the phenomenon of craving start? Do I want to drink more? Am I not satisfied with one drink? Yes. That's it. I'm an alcoholic. That's it. Is my life unmanageable? To this day it is. I do not manage my life. I do not want to manage my life. I just wake up in the morning and do what I need to do to have my spirit close to my higher power and go on with my day. I came to believe in a higher power gradually. I did the steps. All that was told to me was that I just needed to have a willingness to believe that there was something bigger than me. AA for sure was bigger than me. You were my higher power first. AA was my higher power. Good enough. Let's move on. Am I insane? Yes, I am. Step 3. Will I turn my will and my power, my will and my life over to the power of to my higher power? I can't decide what my first thought is going to be. If I see something that reminds me of alcohol, if I'm around my family and they drive me insane, and I think about alcohol, that's my first thought. I can't control that. But the next thought can be, would my higher power want me to drink? That is me giving my will over to my higher power. It's my thoughts. My second thought. My life is, what do I do next? Do I call someone? What action can I take next? Can I call someone? Can I go to a meeting? What can I do next to keep me away from the drink? That's it. That's my life and my will being turned over to my higher power on a daily basis. My 4th step was fun. I wrote all about me. And all about my anger and my resentments, the causes and conditions of my drinking. It was him. It was her. It was definitely him. Every parent I had. My siblings for being born. My cousins for abusing me. I had so many resentments. My parents for being immigrants. Me for speaking Spanish first than English. They taught me Spanish first. How dare they? I also looked at my defects of character in that list. My selfishness of the opportunities that I had squandered. I speak 2 languages fluently. I write and read in both of them. That is a gift. My 5th step was I went to my sponsor's house and I took up my 180-page notebook and started off, and she very patiently and very lovingly listened. And when I would stop, because I was entering a part that was embarrassing or shameful, I would just look at the page and not be able to say the words. And I would hear her voice say, "Keep going." I said, "Okay." And then I would keep going. That took 2 days, several hours each day. And I remember when I was leaving our house that day, I walked out. It was in the afternoon. The sun was coming down. It was pink and blue outside. And I could finally die at peace. The 6th and 7th step, whether or not I am willing to become ready to have my higher power take my shortcomings, that's a practice every day. And that involves me not practicing my defects of character. I cannot ask my higher power to take away the fact that I lie and then continue to lie. There's also a book called Drop the Rock that I read several times. I've gone to meetings about that because the 6th and 7th step are what made me into an AA member, because I could now change my behavior. Maybe not what I thought, but I could change my behavior. The 7th step I talked about. The 8th step, made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. I made the list. Now, whether I was willing to make amends to them all, I don't know. He's in jail. I don't know. We'll see if he gets out. And my sponsor said, yeah, we'll see. You're not going to make amends to people that are going to possibly harm you. I said, okay, that makes sense. That included people that weren't in jail, people that were in my life, people that were at home. I was not going to make amends to those people. I would make amends to myself for holding on to those resentments. 9, started making amends. And I'll just go over one. Made amends to, my sister and my mother, and even financial amends. And I said, Mom, I'll pay you back those $10,000 on that credit card. And she said, don't worry about it. Just don't ever do that again. I remember going to my mom's house, and I had an uncle and an aunt there. And I went into their bedroom, and I said, I need to talk to you about this. And they said, okay. So I opened up my little paper, because my sponsor knows that I go on tangents, and started reading to them my amends letter in Spanish. And somewhere when I was almost done, I remember looking up because I heard something, and I saw my uncle. Now, he at this time was in his probably early 60s. His Mexican, God, he doesn't have some fingers because of construction. He doesn't read or write in Spanish. He speaks only one language. He is a man. He is one of those who's been working since he was 4 in construction. And he is crying. I'd never seen him cry. And he said, and my aunt who's standing next to him, who always cries, she's crying too. And I start crying, and I'm like, why are we crying? And he says, I used to be in AA. I was in AA for 10 years. He's holding a beer in his hand. And I said, what happened? And he said, I just started drinking again. And I said, okay, do you want to go back? And he said, well, the one thing I miss out of AA is when we would get in vans and go to rehabs and sober livings and pick up guys and take them to meetings. That I miss the most. And I said, Theo, AA will always be there. If you ever want to go back, it will always be there. And he said, okay, mija, I know. Thank you. He died 2 years ago, alone, in front of a casino in Mexico, from a heart attack. Alone. Not sober. I continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I continue to do that today. I did that last month when I was in California for an entire month, and I was with my family. And I am 14 years. Why am I still making amends? Because I make mistakes, and because sometimes I have fear, and I behave with fear. But I also don't want to drink. I fear drinking more than I fear making amends. I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. I do that today. I seek through prayer and meditation to know who my higher power is and what my higher power wants of me. The best I can. And I leave the results up to my higher power. I do not need to know what they look like. I just need to know that they are there. And I try my best to carry this message to other alcoholics. I also don't fire sponsees. I don't understand that. I really don't. My sponsor doesn't do that. I have never done that. This is not an employment kind of thing. If you need help, I will help the best I can. It is an honor to work with other people, other women. It's wonderful to see that, to be part of that. I am so honored when I am asked to help another woman, and they can call me their sponsor, they can call me their friend. My sponsor today is my friend. I'm so grateful because these steps have not only allowed me to have the life I have today, but they've allowed my family to have me. My biological father called me today 3 times. I was busy. He is in prison. He's been in prison since I was 13 and I started drinking. Connection? Maybe. He's still in prison today. He's also transitioning to become a woman. I am the only one, I'm the first one that knew that in my family. Now everyone knows. I cannot imagine my life being any other way than it is today. There's all the shiny stuff of the degree from college, of being first generation to go to school. There's all this stuff that's really nice. There's the car that's paid off, yay. There's all this stuff. But I'll end with this. I know I'm past my time. When I left California this time, I went to my sister's house the night before I was leaving, and I go into, and I'm saying bye to everyone. I'm hugging everyone. And my nephew, who is 9 right now, he said, and this is my step-nephew, who I've only known for, I've only started to get close to him in the last few years, that my brother-in-law finally got sober. Because I couldn't be around them as much as I wanted to. He says, "Tia Janett, can I tell you something?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, so remember when we were living in the apartment?" And I said, "Yeah, that was like a year ago." He said, "Well, remember when you would leave and my mom would tell me to go take a shower and you would give me a hug?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that." He said, "Well, when I would go take a shower, I would go to the bathroom and try to take a really fast shower so I could come out and you can give me another hug. And then sometimes you had left already." And I said, "Okay, you get another hug." And if that's not the best gift of sobriety, then I don't know what is. That is the best gift of sobriety. I'm so grateful to be sober. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to not be dead on the street somewhere. I'm grateful that my parents and my mother specifically don't cry over me every night today. And I'm grateful I have a relationship with everyone I choose to have a relationship with today. Thank you so much for having me speak. Thank you for letting me be here and for just being here tonight on a Saturday night. Thank you.